I saw the group Family Without the Old Bat on my grandson's tablet. What my son had written about my death made me smile. My name is Beatrice. I am 72 years old, a widow, and they had forgotten that the old bat owns everything. That Sunday had started like so many others at my home in the Surrey countryside. The scent of a lemon drizzle cake was in the air, a recipe my late husband Arthur had adored. I enjoy a full house, even if full these days just means my son Richard, my daughter-in-law Sarah, and my 15-year-old grandson Leo. They come for Sunday roast, fulfill their obligation, and I pretend not to notice their eagerness to leave. I was in the kitchen drying the lunch dishes. Richard and Sarah were in the living room speaking in low voices about a trip probably somewhere expensive that I would end up paying for. Leo was on the sofa with his headphones lost in his own world. "Gran, my tablet's dying. Can I charge it in here?" he asked, already plugging the device into a socket next to the mixer. "Of course, my dear. Leave it there. Would you like a slice of cake?" "Later, Gran, thanks." About 20 minutes later, they stood up to leave. Sarah gave me that sideways hug that barely connects, and Richard kissed the top of my head. "Bye, Mum. Look after yourself. Call if you need anything." "Godspeed," I said, waving from the door. When I returned to the kitchen, Leo's tablet was still there, its screen lit up. Earlier, I had thought about looking up a recipe for a classic steak and kidney pie, something I hadn't made in years. I'll just use this modern contraption," I thought to myself. I picked up the tablet. It was unlocked. I opened the browser to search for the recipe when a green notification slid onto the screen. A WhatsApp message. The name of the group made me freeze. Family Without the Old Bat. My heart, which had been so calm, gave a jolt. Old bat. I whispered to the empty kitchen. A cold knot formed in my stomach. Who was the old bat deep down I knew? But one always hopes to be mistaken. Curiosity is a terrible thing. It wouldn't let me put the device down. With a slightly trembling finger, I clicked. It was a group with 3 members, my son Richard, my daughter-in-law Sarah, and my grandson Leo. I scrolled up. There were countless messages, photos of things I never saw, holidays they told me they couldn't afford because money was tight, dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants I didn't even know existed, and many, many complaints about me. The old dear made Sunday roast again. "I can't take it anymore," Sarah had written 3 weeks ago. "Patience, love. It's the price of keeping the cash flow going," Richard had replied. She asked if I was feeling cold. "Gran, I'm 30, not 5, Leo had commented with a rolling eyes emoji. That stung, yes, but I kept scrolling. I needed to see. It was then that I found today's messages sent while they were in my living room eating my cake. The first was from my son Richard, my only child. "She's taking too long. When the old bat finally kicks the bucket, we'll sell everything. $10 million each." I read it once, twice, 3 times. $10 million each. They were dividing my assets. The fortune that Arthur and I had built from nothing, starting with a small shop in the north and working every hour God sent. They spoke of my end as if discussing the weather, as if waiting for a delayed train. I didn't cry. I felt something different, an icy clarity that rose up my spine and settled in my chest. Then came the reply from my daughter-in-law Sarah, the one who called me Mummy B when she wanted a piece of jewelry. "Hopefully it's soon." 4 words. Hopefully it's soon. I looked out the kitchen window at the garden. The oak tree Arthur had planted was strong and majestic. I thought of the 30 years I had dedicated to Richard, the nights I'd stayed awake when he was ill, the money I'd invested in his education at Eton and Oxford, an education that it seemed had taught him nothing of character. £10 million, I repeated aloud. They were ambitious at least, but their maths was off. My estate was worth well over $100 million, and more importantly, they'd forgotten one detail. I was still alive, and I had never been a fool. It was then that I smiled, a small dry smile that didn't reach my eyes. I picked up my own phone, opened the camera, and with a patience I didn't know I possessed, I screenshotted everything: Richard's message, Sarah's reply, the name of the group. I sent the images to an email address they didn't know existed. They thought I was a doddering old woman, a boring bat good only for signing checks and making Sunday roast. They saw this house, the commercial properties in London, the estate in the Cotswolds, and thought they just had to stretch out their hands and take it. They forgot who had managed it all alone after Arthur passed. They forgot who negotiated with barristers and bankers. They underestimated me. It was their first mistake, and it would be their last. I deleted the photos from my phone, cleared the browser history on Leo's tablet, and put it back on the charger exactly as it was. The lemon drizzle cake was cooling on the counter, but I had lost my appetite. I went to my study, Arthur's favorite room. I sat in his chair. The leather worn and comforting, opened the locked drawer, and took out the latest balance sheet for the holding company I had created years ago. A holding company is like a large safe where I kept everything, the properties, the shares, the cash. And the owner of that safe was one person, Beatrice Ainsworth. Me. The current will left everything to Richard with clauses to protect Leo, but wills, my dear Sarah, are not written in stone. I picked up the phone and dialed the number of Mr. Davies, my solicitor for over 40 years. Davies, it's Beatrice. Good afternoon. Would you have a moment for me on Monday? Yes, first thing. I need to amend my will. It's an urgent matter. I hung up. They wanted the old bat to kick the bucket. Well, the old bat was about to show them she could still walk just fine, and her first stroll would be to her solicitor's office. The night from Sunday to Monday was the longest of my life. I didn't sleep. I sat in my armchair looking out at the ancient yew tree in the garden. The silence of the house seemed to scream. Each creak of the floorboards was an echo of their words. Hopefully it's soon. Old bat. 10 million thalers. When the sun rose, I felt a deep weariness, but it wasn't the kind that called for bed. It was the exhaustion of years of blindness. I had been blind with love. A mother's love is a disarming thing. You see your adult child, but still envision the baby you cradled. You excuse the sharp tone, the short visit, the lack of time. It's the rat race, I would tell myself. But what I saw on that tablet wasn't the rat race. It was cruelty. I showered the hot water, washing away some of the angry trembling. I chose my outfit with a care I hadn't taken in a long time. No floral house dress. I opened the side of the wardrobe where Arthur's clothes still hung, and behind them my old work attire. I chose a pair of beige tailored trousers, a white silk blouse, and a navy blue blazer. I tied my gray hair into a firm chignon. I looked in the mirror. I didn't look like an old bat. I looked like Mrs. Beatrice Ainsworth, chairman of the board of Ainsworth Holdings. A pity my board had consisted of only me for years. At 8:45 a.m., I was leaving the house. I didn't call the chauffeur Richard had insisted I hire, likely to monitor my movements. I called a taxi. "Holborn, please," I said, my voice steady. Mr. Davies's office was in the same old building with its wrought iron lift and smell of wax and old paper. He was waiting for me at the door. "Beatrice, my dear, you worried me yesterday," he said, a gentleman of 80, as sharp as a man half his age. "Sit down, Davies. We don't have much time, and I have much to say." I didn't show him the WhatsApp screenshots. That was my private pain. I just needed him to do as I instructed. "Davies, I want a full forensic audit of everything involving my son's name." He raised his eyebrows. "Richard's company, the wine import business I financed. 100% of it," I corrected. "I want to know where every penny I've put in over the last 5 years has gone. I want the statements, the corporate credit card bills, the invoices, everything." "That will take time, Beatrice, and it will rock the boat." "I don't want to rock the boat, Davies. I want to sink the ship," I said, with a calmness that startled us both. He looked at me for a long moment. He had known Arthur before he'd known me. "Is it that serious?" he asked quietly. "It's worse, Davies. It's a case of ingratitude. Now the will." I took the current document from my bag. "It's all here for Richard, and in his absence for Leo. I want to change it. I want Richard removed from absolutely everything. Beatrice disinheritance is a complex process. You need to prove, I know, gross indignity. But while we work on that, we'll move to Plan B. I'm not leaving anything to be divided after I kick the bucket." I said the phrase tasting bitter. "I'm going to donate it, while I'm alive." "Donate the estate to whom?" "I'm not sure yet. An institution. A foundation we will create, the Arthur Ainsworth Foundation. We will begin transferring the properties to this foundation one by one. The house in Cornwall, the apartments in Knightsbridge, the estate in the Cotswolds. Beatrice, this is irreversible. Exactly what I want. I want it so that when my time comes, the only thing Richard can inherit is my collection of photo albums, so he can see just how much he was loved and how much he threw away. I left his office with my head held high. The first step was taken. When I got home, the phone rang. It was Sarah. "Mummy B, how are you? I was just calling to see if you'd like me to bring Leo over this afternoon to keep you company." Her voice was sickly sweet. My stomach churned. Hopefully it's soon. "Oh, my dear, not today," I replied, affecting the most tired voice I could muster. "I think I ate something that disagreed with me. I'm feeling a bit under the weather. I'm going to lie down." "Oh, you poor thing. Do you want me to pop over with some medicine?" "No need, darling. It's just old age. Let the old bat rest here quietly. She'll get better." I said bat on purpose. There was a brief silence on the other end. "Mummy B, what are you saying?" "Don't talk like that," she said with a nervous laugh. "Just joking, Sarah. God bless." I hung up. They were testing the waters. I went to my real office where I controlled the holding company. Richard thought I just signed whatever he put in front of me. He had no idea I had my own discreet accountant, Mr. Gable, who worked for me from my home twice a week and whom Richard had never paid any mind. "Mr. Gable," I said over the phone, "I need that master access to the accounts for Richard's company, the one you set up for me in case of an emergency. I believe the emergency has arrived." In 5 minutes, I was in. I was looking at the financial heart of my son's company. What I saw was worse than the WhatsApp messages. Richard's company, a supposed wine importer, was a facade, a drain. The loans for working capital I provided every month weren't for buying inventory. They were funneled into an account called Client Entertainment Expenses. I opened the corporate credit card statement, a $7,000 bill from a Japanese restaurant in Mayfair, an $18,000 invoice from a Bond Street jeweler described as a gift for a special client, a trip to Dubai for 2 people Richard and Sarah booked as new market prospecting. But the worst was in the bank transfers, monthly payments of £20,000 to a marketing consultancy I'd never heard of. I Googled the company name. The address was a luxury flat in Chelsea. The owner's name, Sarah Ainsworth, my daughter-in-law. They weren't just waiting for me to die. They had been actively robbing me for years. My son, the man I taught not to steal a sweet from the corner shop, was embezzling money from his own mother to fund luxury trips and a phantom consultancy for his wife. I felt like an idiot, a complete fool. The rage was so intense I could barely breathe. They saw me as a senile old woman, an inexhaustible spring of money. The old bat was the goose that laid the golden eggs, and they were in a hurry to kill the goose. That's when my pain turned to ice. I understood what Arthur had always told me. Beatrice emotion is for life. For business use your head. My head, which they thought was failing, began to work. The plan formed clear as glass. Phase 1, the scare already initiated with Davies. Phase 2, the drought. Phase 3, the foundation. Phase 4, the revelation. I picked up the phone and called the bank manager. "Mr. Wallace, it's Beatrice Ainsworth. From now on, any transfer from the holding account to my son's company requires my physical signature. The power of attorney Richard holds to move these funds is suspended, effective immediately." "But Mrs. Ainsworth, it's for yesterday, Mr. Wallace, for yesterday." I hung up. The well had run dry. My heart wasn't light. It was heavy as lead. I was about to financially destroy my own son, but he was the one who had declared war. I was merely defending myself. I looked at the photo on my desk. Arthur and I at Richard's graduation. We were so proud. The phone rang again. I knew who it was. I took a deep breath and answered, putting on my most frail, gentle voice. "Mom, it's me, Richard. Is everything all right? Sarah told me you weren't well." The concern in his voice was so fake, it was sticky. "Oh, my son, I'm feeling better. Just the age, you know. We don't have the same strength, do we?" "No, Mom. But you take care. You're strong." "I am, aren't I?" You know, Richard, I was just thinking. I think I'm going to sell the house in Cornwall. The silence on the other end was absolute. I could hear him stop breathing. Sell the Cornwall house. Why so suddenly? Oh, it's so much expense and I hardly use it. Mr. Davies says it's just money sitting there. I've decided to invest in other things. What things, Mom? We were going to use it for Christmas. Leo has already invited his friends. His voice was no longer concerned. It was irritated. Oh, you can rent a cottage, my dear. You'll manage. I've already decided. In fact, Mr. Davies should be calling you tomorrow about some company papers, just routine things. Company papers? What papers? Oh, Richard, you know I don't understand these things properly. It's just bureaucracy. Don't you worry. Mom, don't sell the house. Think it over, for Leo's sake. I'll think about it, my dear. I'll think about it. We hung up. I smiled. The first pawn had been moved. They thought the boring old bat was unwell lying in bed. Little did they know the bat was in her office with a pen in her hand, signing their first sentence. The well had run dry, and I could hardly wait to see the desperation on their faces when they realized the water wasn't coming back. Tuesday arrived cool and crisp. I hadn't slept a wink, but not from sadness. It was from energy. The chill I had felt on Sunday had turned into fuel. I spent the morning in my home office with Mr. Gable, my discreet accountant. He looked pale. In just 2 hours of analyzing the statements I had pulled from Richard's company, he had already found over 250,000 talents in obvious misappropriations from the last 2 years. Mrs. Ainsworth, this is, he began, scratching his head. It's theft, Mr. Gable. Let's call it what it is, I said, calmly noting the figures in a hardcover ledger. The young man used the company card to buy a 15,000 watch in Geneva, Switzerland, booked as office supplies. A very fine piece of stationery, I commented without looking up. Just then, the landline rang. It was the shrill ring I knew was from an outside line. I had left my mobile on silent. I answered on speakerphone. Mum, for God's sake, what's happening? It was Richard. His voice wasn't the gentle tone of a concerned son. It was the high-pitched shriek of panic. The drought had begun. I looked at Mr. Gable and motioned for him to be quiet. I put on my best confused elderly voice. Richard, my dear, what is all this shouting? Has something happened? Yes, something's happened. The bank. I went to pay a supplier, and the bank said the transfer from the holding company was denied. Denied, Mum. Mr. Wallace, the manager, said, you changed the authorization, that my power of attorney was suspended. Ah, music to my ears. Hopefully, it's soon he had wanted. His soon had arrived. Oh dear, denied. How strange. You know Mr. Davies was here yesterday. He had me sign a stack of papers. Said they were security protocols to protect the assets. You know how it is, so many scams these days. He said everything now needs my physical signature, my own hand. I think that must be it. Protect it from whom, Mum? From me, he yelled. I have bills to pay. I have payments due today. How am I supposed to run the company like this? Run it, I repeated slowly. Well then, my dear, it's simple. Bring the papers here to the house and I'll sign. What is it you have to pay so urgently? There was a silence on the other end. I could hear him breathing, almost hyperventilating. Bring them, Richard. I'm old, but I'm not dead. The pen still works. Bring the invoices, the receipts. It's the corporate card bill and the marketing consultancy fee. Wonderful. Bring everything. The detailed statement for the card, the contract for this consultancy. I want to read them. I like to stay informed. I'll be waiting for you for tea. I hung up before he could reply. Mr. Gable looked at me. He won't bring them, Mrs. Ainsworth. The receipts are fraudulent. I know, Gable, I know, and that's exactly why I asked. It didn't even take 40 minutes. Their car screeched down my street. And most interestingly, Sarah came with him. She hadn't visited me on a Tuesday morning since Leo had chickenpox some 10 years ago. I had the maid serve tea in the drawing room, the one we rarely use. I made a point of sitting in the straight-backed armchair, the one Arthur used for meetings. They entered. Richard was flushed, his tie crooked. Sarah was pale, forcing a smile that looked more like a grimace. Mummy B, what a scare. Richard said you blocked the accounts. Did something happen? Are you all right? Was it some sort of scam? I'm perfectly fine, my dear. Better than ever, I replied, smiling back. Just putting the house in order. Where are the papers, Richard? He threw a leather folder onto my coffee table. The teacup nearly spilt. Mum, this is ridiculous. I can't come here every time I need to pay a bill. I run the company. You're humiliating me. I put on my reading glasses, which I hardly need, but they lend an air of seriousness. I opened the folder. As I suspected, he had only brought the cover page of the statement. The total amount, £8,000, and an invoice for £20,000 from SG Marketing Consultancy. Well now, I said, flicking through the papers, where's the rest of it? The rest of what, Mum? The total is there. You just need to sign the check. Richard, I taught you better than that. Where is the itemized credit card statement? The one that says where you spent the money, and where is the contract for this SG Consultancy £20,000? What service exactly do they provide? Sarah, who was pouring herself tea, choked. The hot liquid spilled onto the saucer. Mum, that's an operational detail, my business. You don't need to see that, just sign. Sarah, dear, get a napkin. You've made a mess, I said sweetly. Richard, I don't sign what I don't read. If I'm going to pay £18,000 at a jeweler's, as Mr. Gable informed me just a little while ago, I want to know who the special client was who received the gift. Richard went white. If I'm going to pay £20,000 a month to a consultant, I continued, shifting my gaze to Sarah. I want her company registration number and a report of services. I don't throw money down the drain. Sarah tried to speak. Her voice came out as a squeak. But Mummy B, it's market strategy, modern things, rankings, insights. You don't understand these things. I leaned forward, taking off my glasses. I don't understand funny. I understood how to build a fortune of over £100 million. I think I can manage to understand a credit card bill. No details, no signature. You may have your tea, but you will leave without the money. Richard shot to his feet. This is absurd. You're going senile, treating me like a boy, after everything I do for this company. It's precisely what you do that I want to understand, my son. Come back when you have the papers. All of them. The Dubai invoice, Sarah's reports, the restaurant receipts. I'm anxious to read them. And they looked at me as if I were a ghost. Sarah pulled Richard by the arm. Let's go, Richard. Let's go now. They left. I heard the front door slam. I went to the kitchen window in time to see them arguing in the car. Sarah was gesticulating, hitting the dashboard. I told you she wasn't an idiot. You and your greed, $10 million. I couldn't hear, but I could read her lips. I took a sip of my still hot tea. The first battle was won. They were confused, angry, and most importantly, their bills were coming due. On Wednesday, I didn't stay home knitting. I took a taxi to an address in Mayfair, a discreet office Mr. Davies had rented for me for 30 days. Richard thought I was at home depressed. Little did he know I had set up a war room. In the meeting room were Mr. Davies, Mr. Neves, the forensic accountant Mr. Gable had recommended, and a woman named Dr. Helena, a specialist in the third sector. Good morning, gentleman and lady, I said, placing my handbag on a chair. Mr. Neves opened his laptop. Mrs. Ainsworth, what we found in your son's company isn't mismanagement, it's fraud. Criminal. The invoices are fake. Your daughter-in-law's consultancy is a shell company registered to a drop address. We could file a criminal complaint tomorrow. I held up a hand. Not yet, Mr. Neves. A criminal case is noisy. It means press. I want silence. I want surgical precision. For now, your job is to document. I want the exact amount they siphoned off over the last 10 years adjusted for inflation. I want every penny. He nodded. I turned to Dr. Helena. Doctor, the foundation, how are we proceeding? Beatrice to transfer the properties, Cornwall the Cotswolds estate, the commercial buildings to the Arthur Ainsworth Foundation. We need a clear purpose. Philanthropy, education, the arts. I thought for a second. I thought of what my son had written of the daughter-in-law who wished me dead. Elderly care, I said. I want a foundation that looks after people my age who have been abandoned, disrespected, or robbed by their own families. I want the money that is not going to my son to care for those who truly need protection. Mr. Davies smiled for the first time. Beatrice, that's poetic. he said. "It's Justice Davies. I want the deed for the Cornwall house to be the first. Richard called me yesterday furious that I was going to sell it. He has no idea. I'm not going to sell it. I'm going to donate it." "It will take a few days to prepare the draft, Beatrice." "We're in a hurry, Doctor. A great hurry." I left the meeting feeling 40 years old again. They thought they were dealing with the little old lady who bakes cakes. They were about to find out they were dealing with the woman who had negotiated with bankers and landowners her entire life. The time bomb exploded on Friday. I didn't have to do anything, only wait. The doorbell rang at 3 p.m. It was Sarah, alone. When I opened the door, she hardly looked like the same woman. She wore no makeup, her eyes red and swollen from crying. Her blonde hair, always impeccable, was carelessly tied back. She wasn't carrying her usual expensive handbag. "Beatrice, please." She didn't even call me Mummy B. Desperation had torn her mask away. "Come in, Sarah. Would you like some water?" "I don't want water," she shouted, then lowered her voice as if in fear. "The bank is going to take our flat. The mortgage is in the company's name. The payment was due yesterday. Richard's card was declined at the supermarket. At the supermarket, Beatrice. What have you done?" I sat calmly in my armchair. "I've done nothing, Sarah. I only asked for transparency. It was Richard who couldn't show me the accounts. I can't sign a blank check to pay for, what was it? Ah, yes, £15,000 worth of office supplies." She began to cry, an ugly, angry sob. But my consultancy, that money was mine. It was my work." I took a sip of my water. "What work, Sarah?" I asked Mr. Neves, my new auditor, to find the service reports from your company. He found nothing. Not one email, not one campaign, not one insight. £20,000 a month. For what exactly? That's when she stopped crying. Suddenly she was still, and her face, which had been flushed, turned white as paper. She understood. She understood this wasn't an old woman's confusion. It was an investigation. You investigated us." "I investigated my own finances, my dear. And I discovered I've had rats in the pantry for a very long time." She tried her last card. Pity. "Richard is desperate. He's locked himself in the bedroom. He's talking about doing something stupid. Are you going to destroy your only son over money?" That hit me. The mention of something stupid. But only for a second. The image of my son typing when the old bat finally kicks the bucket returned. Money, I never cared about the money, Sarah. I cared about the lies, the lack of character, the betrayal, about the "hopefully it's soon." I said the phrase, her words. Sarah stopped breathing. If she was pale before now, she looked like a ghost. Her chin trembled. What did you say?" "I read it, Sarah. Family without the old bat." She took a step back as if I had slapped her. That was a joke. A stupid joke Leo made. A teenager thing. £10 million each is not a teenager's joke, Sarah. It's the greed of adults. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to call the estate agent. The Cornwall house has a very interested buyer. Its name is the Arthur Ainsworth Foundation. She didn't understand the second part, only the first. "Cornwall," she whispered, defeated. "Get out of my house, Sarah, and tell my son that there is lunch on Sunday, and tell him to bring Leo." Sunday arrived. The smell of roast beef was in the house. I made a point of making the same meal as always, the same lemon drizzle cake. They arrived, the three of them, in silence. Leo had his headphones on, but there was no music. He knew something was wrong. Richard was thinner, with deep, dark circles under his eyes. Sarah wouldn't look me in the face. We sat at the table. No one ate. Finally, Richard put down his cutlery. His voice was low, a hoarse whisper. "Mom, I don't know what you saw or what you think you saw, but please forgive me. I was wrong. I mixed things up, but I'm your son. You can't do this to me." I cut a piece of my roast beef, chewing slowly. "Do what Richard asked for the accounts I gave you a company. You used it to steal from me, you and your wife." "Dad steal?" Leo asked, taking off his headphones. "What is she talking about?" "Shut up, Leo," Sarah yelled. "This is adult conversation." "No," I said, my voice firm, cutting across the table. "Now it's family conversation. Sit up straight, Leo. You will also want to know what your parents were planning to do when the boring old bat here kicked the bucket." Richard and Sandra froze. I didn't shout. I spoke with the calm of a surgeon. I wasn't going to show the screenshots yet. I wasn't going to reveal the foundation. I was just going to give them back what they gave me. "I paid for your trip to Dubai, Richard, and yours, Sarah. I paid for your jewelry. I paid for every expensive dinner you hid from me. And worse, I paid for a phantom company in my daughter-in-law's name for 5 years. That comes to—" I looked at the ceiling, pretending to calculate around $400,000, not including interest. "Mom, I was going to pay you back. It was a loan," he said, his voice desperate. I laughed, a dry laugh that didn't reach my eyes. "A loan. You call wishing for my death a loan. You call waiting for my funeral a business opportunity." He paled. He realized I knew more than the audit showed. "What do you want?" he asked, defeated. "Do you want me to kneel? I'll kneel right here, but don't take my money. Don't take my company." I stood up from the table, looking at my son, the grown man who acted like a spoiled little thief. "Your company. You never had a company, Richard. You had an allowance, a fat allowance I gave you out of love, and you spat on the plate that fed you." "Mum," he began, trying to stand. "Sit. The audit continues. The Cornwall house was donated to charity yesterday. The estate will be next." Sarah let out a muffled scream. "Donated. That house was mine. It was Leo's." I turned to her, and for the first time my voice came out as cold as the ice I'd felt that Sunday. "Nothing here is yours, Sarah. It never was. You ate the fruit from the tree, but forgot who planted it. And now the drought has come, and from what I'm seeing, it's going to be a very long winter." They sat there paralyzed. They still thought it was a fight about an allowance. They had no idea I was dismantling the empire they thought they would inherit. The game had only just begun. The Sunday lunch ended in the heaviest silence that dining room had ever witnessed. Richard and Sarah left without saying goodbye, dragging Leo, who looked back one last time, his eyes frightened. I said nothing. I just told the maid to clear the plates that were practically untouched. The roast had gone cold. For the first time, I didn't care. The Cornwall house was donated. The first pillar of their imaginary empire had fallen, and I knew the rest of the structure wouldn't take long to crumble. The concrete consequence didn't wait even 72 hours. On Wednesday, my phone rang. I was watering my ferns. It was Richard. His voice wasn't the irritated tone of a man who'd lost his holiday home. It was the hollow voice of someone who had lost the ground beneath his feet. "Mom, they took the flat." I stopped the watering can. "They who, Richard? What are you talking about?" "The bank. The installment on that investment I made with the company, it was overdue. The one you wouldn't pay. The flat was the collateral. The bailiff came today. We have 3 days to get out." "3 days, Mom." I could hear Sarah's voice in the background, a hysterical, high-pitched cry. "Do something, call her. Beg her for God's sake, Richard." "Mom, please, for Leo's sake. Think of your grandson. He'll be on the street. What will they say at his school?" I thought of Leo. I thought of what he wrote. I thought of what he was learning from those parents. I have thought of Leo, Richard. I've thought of him a lot. That's why his room here at the house is ready. He can come whenever he wants. His suitcase can come today. The door is always open for my grandson." There was a pause. He understood what I'd said. And us," he asked, his voice almost a whisper. "You are adults, married, healthy. Find a place to live, a place you can afford." "Afford with what?" he screamed, the panic returning. "You've blocked everything. I don't have a penny. My credit is ruined. You've destroyed me." "No, Richard. I just stopped paying your bills. What you call being destroyed, the rest of the world calls reality. You'll have to rent a flat, a small one, like everyone else does." "I will not humiliate myself. I'm an Ainsworth." "No, Richard. You are an Ainsworth. I am the Ainsworth. And there's a very big difference there. I built. You spent." "Mum, please. It's your son." "It's my son who was stealing from me, Richard. It's my son who was calculating my inheritance. 3 days is plenty of time to pack Sarah's handbags. If you need cardboard boxes, I have several in the garage. Come by and get them." I hung up the phone. My heart was tight pounding. He was my son, my blood. But it was like cutting out a diseased part of the body to save the rest. It was surgery, and it had to be done. They tried to reverse it. Oh, how they tried. First they tried to use Leo. On Friday, the intercom buzzed. It was Leo alone with a backpack on. "Gran, can I come in?" Dad dropped me at the corner. I hugged him. He seemed smaller. "Of course, my dear. Come in. I've made that steak and onions you like." We sat in the kitchen like we used to when he was little. He ate in silence, 2 plates. He was hungry. "They're in a hotel," he said quietly, "near the coach station. It's grim, Gran. It smells of damp." I just nodded. "My mom, she cries all day. My dad just stays on the phone shouting at people. They sent me here." I stopped washing the dishes. "I know, my dear. They told me to ask you to stop, to tell you I love you, to convince you to give back the flat. She told me to cry if I had to." I turned to him, crouching in front of my grandson, who was already a young man. "And you, Leo, what do you want to tell me?" He looked down at his feet, and for the first time I saw shame in his eyes. I saw the group Gran, what Dad wrote, what Mom replied. I said stupid things, too. I said you were a bat. I'm sorry, Gran." The tear that fell from his eye was real. "I forgive you, Leo. I forgive you because you are young and still learning. They should have known better. What your father and mother did wasn't a stupid thing. It was a plan. They had been stealing from me for years. The money that paid for your posh school, this mobile of yours, the flat where you lived, it was embezzled money." "Stealing." He seemed shocked. "Stealing. And I am not doing this to punish Leo. I'm doing this to teach, mostly you. I will not let you turn into a man who waits for his grandmother to die to get rich. You will be better than that. You will work, you will study, and you will build your own money." He hugged me, a real tight hug. "Can I really stay here, Gran, for real?" "You can, but with one rule. You will make your own bed, you will wash your own dishes, and you will take the bus to school. The life of a prince is over." He smiled a small smile. "Okay, Gran. The bus is cool." Their first attempt had failed. They had not bent me with Leo. They had only lost him. The second attempt was more serious and more foolish. The following Monday, Mr. Davies called me. His voice was amused. "Beatrice, we have a problem. Richard has hired a lawyer, a chap named Pisanha, a real courtroom shark. He's filed a motion for, prepare yourself, a conservatorship." I burst out laughing, a loud laugh that echoed in my study. "A conservatorship on what grounds?" "Alleging senility. They claim you are squandering the family fortune donating valuable assets like the Cornwall house in a clear sign of mental confusion. They say you are being manipulated by me and the auditors." "Manipulated," I repeated. "They really do think I'm an idiot. Davies, this is perfect. It's exactly what I wanted. Arrange a meeting with Richard, with Sarah, and with their shark. But not here and not in your office. In that office we rented in Mayfair. Our war room. Tell them it's an attempt to reach a settlement. Beatrice, they will come with blood in their eyes." "Excellent. I'll be waiting with the documents." The Wednesday of the meeting dawned rainy. I dressed as if I were going to the most important meeting of my life. Because it was. I wore a red linen suit, red the color of war. I put my hair up and wore the pearl necklace Arthur had given me. I arrived at the rented office. Mr. Davies was already there. Mr. Neves, the forensic accountant, stood beside him with a stack of documents and a laptop. At 10 a.m. sharp they arrived. Richard was thin-haggard, wearing a suit that seemed too big for him. Sarah had deep circles under her eyes, heavy makeup hiding the tears, and a contained rage that made her tremble. And between them Mr. Pisanha, a large man with a booming voice who walked into the room as if he owned it. "Mrs. Ainsworth," he began, sitting down uninvited. "A pleasure to meet you. We are here to resolve this in the best possible way. We understand you are going through a delicate time." "I'm perfectly well, Mr. Pisanha. Better than ever. Would you care for some coffee?" No, thank you. Let's get straight to the point. My client Richard, as the sole heir, is deeply concerned about the erratic management you have undertaken of the family's assets. Donations of properties worth millions blocking the company accounts. In the eyes of the law, this constitutes a clear sign of profligacy, of senility. Senility, I repeated, smiling. We are prepared not to proceed with the conservatorship petition if you agree to appoint Richard as your legal proxy. He will take care of everything. You will be able to rest, which is what you deserve. I looked at Richard. He couldn't meet my gaze. He was staring at the table. Counselor, I said calmly, you are the third lawyer my son has hired. The other two were smarter. They quit when they saw the documents. Have you seen the documents? I've seen a mother punishing a son over a family squabble. This is an abuse of financial power over a domestic disagreement. I interrupted. Mr. Neves, if you please. It was my cue. The auditor switched on the large screen on the meeting room wall. Good morning, said Neves. What you call a disagreement we in forensic accounting call by other names. The first is embezzlement, Section 1 of the Theft Act. The second is fraud under the Fraud Act 2006. The third, forgery and false accounting. And as we have two or more agents, conspiracy to defraud. A giant spreadsheet opened on the screen. What you see here, Neves said, pointing with a laser, is the breakdown of the misappropriated funds. The company SG Consultancy, in the name of Mrs. Sandra Ainsworth. He pointed at my daughter-in-law, received from Ainsworth Holdings over the last 5 years the sum of £400,000 for non-existent services. Sandra let out a whimper. We see here, Neves continued, a trip to Dubai for 2 booked as market prospecting. We see a £15,000 watch bought in Geneva, booked as office supplies. We see $18,000 in jewelry, booked as a client gift. The running total so far is £780,000 adjusted for interest. The shark lawyer was pale. He looked at Richard and Sarah with fury. He had been misled. This is a fabrication, an interpretation, he stammered. It's accounting, counselor, I said. Numbers don't lie. People do. Richard finally lifted his head. His eyes were red. Mom, it was management. I was going to pay it back. It was a loan. You're exposing me. Exposing you, I said. You're right, Richard. This is just money. It's ugly. It's a crime, but it's just money. I would even forgive you the money. What I don't forgive is the intent. I signaled to Mr. Davies. He changed the screen, and there it was, giant, on the wall of the meeting room. The screenshot from Leo's tablet. Family without the old bat. Sandra clapped her hands to her mouth, letting out a muffled scream. Richard froze. Mr. Davies moved to the next image. The message from my son. When the old bat finally kicks the bucket, we'll sell everything, $10 million each. And the next. The reply from my daughter-in-law. Hopefully it's soon. A deadly silence fell over the room. The only sound was Sandra's choked sobbing. Mr. Pisana looked at the screenshots, looked at his clients, looked at me. He understood. The senile old woman had just executed a checkmate. Richard, the lawyer said, his voice low. Is this true? Richard didn't answer. He was broken. I stood up and walked to the window. The rain had stopped. Mr. Pisana, I said, my back to them. Do you really think the woman who prepared this dossier, who uncovered the fraud, who started a foundation, and has proof of gross injury is senile? Do you think any judge will grant you a conservatorship? I turned to face them. Your motion is my proof of slander. And these messages, I pointed to the screen, are my grounds to disinherit Richard for unworthiness. But I'm not going to do that. A flicker of hope appeared on Richard's face. I am not going to prosecute you criminally, Richard, for Leo's sake and for the memory of your father, but it's over. I sat down. Now for my terms. This was the new power dynamic. They no longer had a lawyer. They were defendants. The import company will be liquidated. Sandra's consultancy will be dissolved. You will both sign the papers today. You will sign a confession of debt for the exact amount Mr. Neves has calculated. £780,000. You will pay me back in installments for the rest of your lives." "Pay!" Sandra shrieked. "With what you've taken everything." "You will work," I said, my voice rising for the first time. "A real job. You'll clock in, you'll have a boss. You'll learn the value of $100, and every spare penny you have you will pay me." "And the rest?" Richard whispered. "The house, the estate, the buildings, the $100 million. Ah, the $10 million each." I smiled. "That already has an owner. Mr. Davies, please." Mr. Davies handed each of them a brochure, a beautiful one printed on quality paper with a photo of my Cornwall house on the cover. "The Arthur Ainsworth Foundation," Richard read aloud. "Exactly. The entire Ainsworth estate is being transferred while I live to this foundation. Its purpose is the support and assistance of the elderly in situations of familial and financial abandonment. People like me, but who don't have the means to defend themselves." Sandra became hysterical. "You gave our money, Leo's money, to a bunch of random old people." "I gave my money to my peers, Sandra, to the bats and old folk that children like you discard. The difference is, my money will protect them. As for Richard's inheritance, he will inherit. The law obliges me to leave him his legal share, and his legal share will be the exact amount of the debt he owes me. Your client, Mr. Pisana, will inherit a debt of £780,000. Congratulations." Richard collapsed, sobbing at the table like a child. Sandra was motionless, her face a mask of hatred and shock. Mr. Pisana stood up, adjusting his tie. "My clients need a moment. I am resigning from this case." He quickly left the room without looking back. I looked at the two of them, the beautiful, ambitious couple reduced to nothing. "You have 1 hour to sign the confession of debt. If you don't, Mr. Neves takes that folder straight to the Crown Prosecution Service. The choice is yours, a rented flat or a prison cell." I didn't feel triumphant. I felt a cold relief. The surgery had been a success. The cancer had been removed. The old bat had just saved Arthur's legacy from the only thieves she never thought she'd have to fear. The Mayfair meeting room was left behind. Richard and Sandra signed everything: the confession of debt, the dissolution of the company, the waiver of any future contestation. They signed in silence. Sandra was trembling so much she could barely hold the pen. Richard looked like a wax figure, his eyes hollow and dead. They were no longer the ambitious predators. They were just two broken people with a debt of over $780,000. As they left, escorted by a security guard Mr. Davies had insisted on hiring, they didn't look back. I went home. The silence was profound. Leo was at school. For the first time in weeks, I felt the weight of my 72 years. I sat in my armchair, the same one where I had not slept on the night of the discovery. The anger was gone. The ice of strategy had melted. What was left was a sad weariness. I had won. But my God, what a bitter victory. I had cut my own son out of my life. But life, my friends, does not stop when you are sad. Life demands that you get up and water the ferns. And so I did. The new reality settled like fine dust. Leo stayed with me, and his transformation was the first light in so much darkness. The boy who lived in headphones and complained about my roast was suddenly living in the real world. He now had chores. He took the bus to school and, in the first month, found a part-time job at a local corner shop as a packer. He would come home with aching feet, with the few pounds he earned, and a pride on his face I never saw when he was given a $500 tablet by his parents. "Gran," he told me one day about 3 weeks after the break, "I bought this." It was a box of my favorite tea. I bought it with my own money. I cried while making that tea. As for Richard and Sandra, news came in pieces. They could no longer afford the hotel near the coach station. They rented a studio flat in a distant borough, a place I didn't even know existed. Mr. Davies informed me that Richard, with a ruined credit score and no references, had found a job as a used car salesman at a corner lot. He worked on commission. Sandra, the Dubai consultant, was working in a call center, handling complaints for a cable TV company 8 hours a day with a headset on. The first debt payment arrived. Richard came alone on a rainy Thursday. He didn't call. He clapped at the gate. I met him at the service door. He was thin, the suit that was once for his office, now threadbare at the elbows. He wouldn't look me in the eye. "Mum, I brought it." He held out a brown envelope. Inside was $500 in 20s and 50s, the first payment on a $780,000 debt. I took the envelope. I did not invite him in. I went to my desk, counted the money, and signed a receipt. Correct. $500, deducted from the principal. I handed him the receipt. He just stood there, hand outstretched, waiting for me to say something to ask how he was to forgive him. "That will be all, Richard. I'm busy." He lowered his head. "Yes, ma'am. I'll bring the next one next month." I closed the door and wept. He was my son, the baby I had nursed, and now he was paying me in crumpled notes for the theft he committed. The lesson was harsh for us both. I only saw Sandra once, about 2 months later. It was at the supermarket. I was in the queue for the till buying cheese and a good bottle of wine for dinner. She was in the next aisle buying 2 tins of sardines, instant noodles, and a loaf of sliced bread. She saw me. She had aged. Her blonde hair, once platinum, had 2 inches of dark roots. Her once manicured nails were bitten. She abandoned her queue and came towards me. "Happy?" she whispered, her voice full of venom. "You got what you wanted. Are you happy, Beatrice?" "I never wanted any of this, Sarah. You did. You destroyed us. Destroyed us. We're living in a hole. Richard drinks every night. Is that fair? You there buying your expensive wine. Fair Sarah is working, which is what you're doing now. You're just tasting real life without my money to sweeten it. And this wine, I worked for it. You should try it sometime." She looked at me with a hatred I had never seen. "You're a monster. You took my son from me." "No, I saved my grandson. Now if you'll excuse me, it's my turn at the till." She stood there trembling in the middle of the aisle. People were staring, the ex-millionaire and the old bat. No one there knew the story, but in that moment I understood the lesson she was learning. She wasn't learning character. She wasn't sorry. She was angry she'd been caught. The lesson she and Richard learned wasn't about morality. It was about power. They learned the hard way that they never had it and never would. My focus, however, wasn't on them. It was on the future. The money they paid me, every penny, went directly into a specific fund. The Arthur Ainsworth Foundation was born, and it was born in a hurry. The house in Cornwall which they coveted became the first headquarters. But it wasn't an ordinary retirement home. I used the best of my money, hired the best nurses, the best doctors. I turned that place of empty parties into a place of dignity. The Arthur Ainsworth House Cornwall branch was inaugurated 3 months later. The impact was immediate. At the opening, I met the first resident, Mrs. Zilda, 80 years old, with the saddest blue eyes I had ever seen. Her story was similar to mine. Her children had convinced her to sell her flat, saying they would buy a bigger one for everyone. As soon as she signed the power of attorney, they vanished. They left her in a state-run home where she shared a room with 5 others. When she arrived in Cornwall, she couldn't believe it. She thought it was a trick. "My dear," she told me, holding my hand, her skin thin as paper, Why are you doing this for me? I'm nobody. You are just like me, Zilda. You just weren't as lucky as I was to find out in time. This house was meant for my children, but they didn't deserve it. So now it's yours, and Tina's, and Mr. Roberto's." Within 6 months, the estate in the Cotswolds, the one Richard thought he'd sell to buy prize cattle, became a rehabilitation center. The commercial buildings in the city, which had paid for their trips to Dubai, now paid the salaries of hundreds of foundation employees. My name, which used to only appear in society columns as the Widow Ainsworth, was now in the papers for another reason. The foundation became the largest private donor to elderly causes in the county. I was no longer the old woman who baked cakes. I was the chairman of a board. I had meetings. I signed balance sheets. I decided lives. I was more alive at 72 than I had been at 60. There comes a point in old age when you spend a lot of time looking back. I sit in Arthur's study, which is now truly mine, and I think about it all. I think of the pain of that Sunday afternoon of the discovery on the tablet. We spend our lives building first the family, then the fortune. We think one is meant to protect the other. In my case, the fortune had to protect itself from the family. The greatest lesson age gave me wasn't patience. I'd spent my patience on Richard. What age gave me was clarity and knowing when to stop being patient. They called me a bat, and they were right. I am a bat. I'm a bat with lazy people. I'm a bat with dishonest people. I'm a bat with people who have no character. And I've learned to be proud of being the bat, because the bat is the one who sees the bat, is the one who holds people to account, and the bat is the one who changes the game. They thought old age was a disease that made me weak, that made me forget things. They had no idea that old age is a suit of armor. You've seen this film so many times. You know how it ends. You just no longer have the patience for the bad scenes. My new legacy is not concrete. It's not the buildings nor the estate. It's Leo. Last week he came home buzzing. He'd been accepted into university for engineering at a public university. He got in with top marks. "Gran, I did it! I got in!" he shouted, spinning me around in the middle of the living room. "I knew you would, my dear. I knew it. Now let's celebrate. Where do you want to have dinner?" "No, Gran. I want to ask you something. I know I could live here, but I'd like to go to the university halls to live the student life. And I don't want you to pay. I'm going to get an internship. I'll apply for a student loan. I want to do it my way like Granddad Arthur did, from scratch." I looked at that young man, my son's son, and I saw my Arthur in him. The essence, the strength. The bad tree had produced good fruit. "I'll give you the halls," I said, "on one condition. That you come for lunch every Sunday, and you can complain about the roast if you want." He laughed. "I will never complain about your roast again, Gran." The money Richard and Sandra wanted so badly, the 100 million pallers now served a purpose. And their debt. That $500 that arrives religiously every month, that hard-earned money from used car commissions and call centers. I make a point of taking that envelope, and every month I deposit that specific amount into Mrs. Zilda's account. It's the money from Sandra's consultancy. It now pays for the medicines and creams of an old woman who truly needs them. It's my own private irony. Today, I am in Cornwall not as a guest, but as a host. The house is full, not with fake people talking about trips, but with old ladies laughing and playing cards. Mrs. Zilda is on the veranda learning to use a tablet. Guess who's teaching her Leo? He came for the weekend before heading off to university. He's showing her how to make a video call to her granddaughter who lives far away. The granddaughter Zilda's children also tried to keep her from. I sat down beside them, looking out at the same sea Richard and Sandra thought was theirs. "Gran," Leo said without taking his eyes off the screen. "Dad called yesterday." I sat up a little straighter. He got a promotion. Manager. He sounded really happy. And Mum, she quit the call center. She's doing nails. She said she's going to start paying her share of the debt too. I said nothing. "I still love them, Gran. They were very wrong. But they're my parents." "I know, my dear. And you should love them. But love doesn't pay the bill for a lack of character. They are on their path, a path they dug for themselves, and we are on ours." Mrs. Zilda smiled at the screen. "I did it. I can see my granddaughter. Oh, my darling, I've missed you so." Leo smiled at me. I smiled back. I picked up my glass of orange juice. The sun was setting. The smell wasn't of lemon cake. It was of the sea. They had wanted the old bat to kick the bucket so they could start their lives. Little did they know that in wishing for my end, they had just given me a brand new beginning.